Again, I'm Susie Meneret from MEF. Coming next is Nassia and our traditional IoT connectivity session. Nassia, great to have you with us as always.
Wonderful to be here, Susie. What an event. What a day. Well
Yes.
done. It's been amazing. A lot of things to ponder, a lot of insights
Yeah.
to comprehend and, take in.
Yeah.
For those of that are attending and they don't know who I am, I'm Nassia Skoulikariti. I am the MEF IoT chair, and I will be leading you through the next session. So next up, we'll have the future of wholesale IoT. And to start us off, I would like to introduce you to Andrew Parkin-White. He's the co-founder of TecFutures, and he will take us through a small presentation to let us know what is happening with wholesale IoT. Andrew, welcome, sir. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Nassia. How are you today?
Very well, very well. I'm more excited now that I'm here with you.
Yeah. So I've put a short presentation together to kind of set the scene on what TecFutures see as happening in the wholesale space at the moment, based on our conversations with some key providers in this area, plus our own insight. I'm having a few technical difficulties with uploading the presentation, so I'm going to be sharing my screen. So let's see how that goes.
Fantastic. Well, we can see it, Andrew.
Yeah, let me just get it into presentation mode. There we go. Is that okay? Is that visible?
We can see the slides, at least in my screen, are not yet on presentation mode. Perhaps you need to get out and come in with on a presentation mode, or we can continue like this. This is technology, and
technology. And as you know, the people who talk about technology the most are the least technology able. So first of all, a brief introduction to myself. I'm Andrew Parkin-White. I'm the founding partner of TecFutures. We've been going just over a year, along with my business colleague, Phil Todd. Phil and I come with a long track record of working with some of the large names in the consulting and analyst world, including Analysys Mason, IDC, Informa, Omdia, KPMG, and the Economist. So what we do at TecFutures is we focus on the interplay of the technology supply side ecosystems and digital disruption in the enterprise. So we try to look on the two sides of the market. One is what technology supplier ecosystems are doing. So largely we look at enterprise evolving demand, and we look at digital technologies. We have a particular focus on IoT. And we also look at what suppliers are doing in this market. So what are the dynamics of the supply side of the market? And we try to bring those two together. And what we essentially try to do is help our clients to build competitive advantage and revenue growth through our tailored advisory services, which include consulting, custom research, and market analysis. So the first slide I'm going to put up with you is a schematic looking at how we are seeing the market evolving over the next 8 to 10 years. And on the bottom axis, you've got time. On the left axis, you've got market growth. And we've already gone through the phases of early market development where we saw those pioneering types of organizations and moved into a phase, and this is in the growth phase of the market, the earlier adopters moving into the mainstream market, and we've seen customization in key verticals. We're now moving into the next box, and there's naturally an overlap between customization. But as we want to grow into a broader market, we're seeing more productization, more service wraparound. And finally, when a market becomes mature, you get into commoditization. So we're seeing forecasts, depending on whose forecast you look at, we're seeing different numbers, but they seem to hover around 30 billion connected devices by 2030. And I just wanted to look at some of the things that are driving this sort of growth. So first of all, as I said, moving between those boxes, we're seeing shifting customer needs. We're seeing sort of some of the traditional vertical markets, they're probably getting a little bit saturated, a little bit overpopulated now, but there's plenty of scope still. And we're seeing like the next important wave of vertical markets, including areas like industrial IoT, smart cities, agriculture, healthcare. And that's not to say that traditional markets like automotive and transportation and logistics aren't important anymore. But we're also seeing new sets of dynamics from the customer service provider, and they face a challenge really, and this is something that's important for wholesalers to understand. They can either get very, very big or hyperscale to use a technology. They can specialize and focus in niche markets on particular applications, particular geographies, or they can exit from the market. And MVNOs and MNOs are positioning themselves for market evolution beyond those early adopters and the customization in key markets. There's a connectivity evolution happening. Value-added services are becoming easier, and there's more of a focus when I talked about this service wraparound around connectivity management platforms, security, compliance, data analytics. We're seeing a lot of pressures on cost at the moment. We've seen that each new user is probably worth less than the previous one. We're seeing connectivity as a reducing share of the overall dollar spent. It's hovering around 8% for every dollar spent on IoT, and we're seeing intense competition and consolidation. Now, we're seeing growth in device numbers, but this is sort of counteracted by a distinct growth from data traffic, and this is a trend that is going to be ongoing. There are a couple of issues that are kind of impeding the market in attracting those sort of numbers. And those include things like variable network coverage, interoperability, and some issues around scalability. Security is a big issue, and there are rising security concerns among target adoption organizations. And there's also quite a complex regulatory environment evolving, and a need for customer education, customer support. So we see a number of key things for a CSP to offer at the moment. That's that they thoroughly understand the adoption drivers of their customers. They excel in global connectivity, move beyond connectivity alone, pay attention to emerging commercial models, stay ahead of the technology curve, and partner with customers, collaborate, and then understand some of these adjacent technologies that are coming on. And no doubt people have already spoken today about the convergence of AI and IoT and machine learning. Switching our attention to key market trends affecting wholesale providers, we've talked a little bit already about changes in the end user customer base and their characteristics, changing CSP and wholesale business models, technology shifts, and the need to monetize 5G. We've seen the tremendous investment in 5G, and operators and wholesalers are not really getting a return on that investment at any sort of satisfactory levels. Commoditization, regulatory hurdles present an issue, and we also see this transforming customer landscape and the need to adapt and collaborate. And successful organizations will need to embrace innovation, embrace differentiation, and understand how to position for success by understanding not only their customers, so in the case of the wholesalers, understanding the CSP or retail market, but also understanding the enterprise market and potentially understanding the enterprise market's customers. So how am I doing for time, Nassia? Must be doing okay.
Yes, you are. We have 5 more minutes, so before we go to the next section, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to move on to what are a few of the challenges and opportunities facing wholesale providers, and I really see these in 3 sorts of areas. The first is around the challenges around service development. Secondly, around addressing growth opportunities. And the third around competition and differentiation. And I've been lazy, I must admit, and I've put these down as questions, and no doubt we'll pick up with some of these questions in the next stage of our discussion. But just some of the observations when we've been talking to companies, active wholesalers in the market, and some of the issues they're telling us are important in growing the IoT market. So the first one of those is how to handle some of those functionality issues, such as network function virtualization, software-defined networks to offer flexible wholesale services with dynamic provisioning and scaling capabilities. Secondly, understanding what role edge will play in latency-sensitive applications like IoT and AR, and how wholesalers can package these into their offerings. And thirdly, what are the best ways to optimize 5G development? And what we see is that there's a strong focus on the technical capabilities of 5G. So it can offer network slicing, it can offer network function virtualization, it can offer mobile private networks. But what we don't hear is what are those benefits to end users, to the enterprises, and what is the business case of doing that? And one of the key things that comes out of our enterprise research is that enterprises don't buy technology. It's a business decision, and that business decision is corroborated by a management board, and they have to see a strong business case of making those investments. They won't just buy technology for technology's sake. The second area is addressing growth opportunities. So we made the point on the growing demand for mobile data and its associated traffic. How do you manage these? And more importantly, how do you commercialize these as a wholesaler? Secondly, how can you expand your market reach to serve new customers and new segments? And it's important to look at some of the market dynamics. There's a lot of consolidation, merger, etc., going on out there. Who's going to be in business in the next few years' time, and which horses do you back? And for those companies that are hyperscaling, how do you serve them most effectively? And for those companies that are focusing on niche type applications, what sort of products and services can you bring to those? Looking beyond the pure connectivity suite, what partnerships and ecosystem collaborations are important to develop? And how are you going to handle this interplay between IoT and AI? Years ago, we saw with 3G that mobile internet and fast connectivity was bringing over a new paradigm. And we could potentially see the same with IoT and AI. Or is it just simply hype at the moment? I think it's important to develop a position on there. The third area around competition and differentiation. So as wholesalers, how do you differentiate your service with innovative offerings, superior network performance, and excellence in customer support? And what are the best strategies for competing with your MVNO customers? You're in this sort of dual position where quite often a wholesaler has a retail IoT offering as well, and is also selling to MVNO type customers or potentially other network operators with those sort of services. And then finally, accelerating the billing and charging environments and settlement process. So I think my key messages are that there's an awful lot to think about. We often think about, it's easy selling connectivity, it's easy selling SIM cards, this kind of thing, but there is much more to it than that. So very briefly, TecFutures produces a series of free reports. You can download those from our website. Here's an example of a couple of those. We've also done some recently on telco APIs and on MVNO strategies in IoT.
Fantastic, Andrew. Thank you so much. That's been quite insightful, and it's such a great segue to the next section. And to help us out with that, I would like to invite on stage Ajay Joseph, the CTO and head of IoT from iBasis, and Jimmy Jones, the head of security from Zariot. Hello, Jimmy. How are you?
Thanks, Nassia. How are you? It's great to be here.
Fantastic. Why don't you introduce yourself, sir?
Okay, so my name's Jimmy Jones. I work for Zariot, and Zariot are a cellular IoT connectivity provider that's focused on innovation and securing customer solutions, so an MVNO. But we're looking to try and utilize, actually, and maximize the functionality that telecoms has to address the huge IoT market.
Fantastic. And if we can have Ajay on the stage as well. Ajay, hello, good to see you. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, Nassia, how are you?
Very good.
Just a bit about iBasis is a one of the largest wholesalers in the world in telecom. So, in the IoT side of the house, which is one of our business units, we do cellular IoT, and we service enterprises primarily indirectly through in a wholesale model via resellers. And
Fantastic. Welcome, gentlemen. Andrew has set the stage to quite a diverse area of topics within wholesale IoT, which I think now that he set the stage, let's look a little bit deeper. Let's look at how telcos can actually capitalize on all those trends. And Ajay, I'm going to come first to you. And if you could share some insights with us of how can telcos leverage IoT for creating new revenue streams and also improve efficiencies. That goes without saying.
yeah, so just to put things in perspective, IoT historically has been looked at as a low data, relatively low ARPU business. ARPU is usually, depending on the amount of data that's going through, could vary anyway from half a US dollar to $1, which is usually a month. It also takes a lot to put together an IoT ecosystem, all the way working with your MNOs, especially as an MVNO, trying to bring in enterprise customers. When we look at IoT, one of the propositions that we have is bringing together embedded SIMs, eSIMs, EUICCs. That's what we have done from the beginning of time. When you talk about efficiencies, one of the items that we have looked at is 5G and the onset of what's going on with 5G. And the markets that we see where 5G has gained, beyond tremendous, it's a lot of traction, is in the US market. There is a new technology out there called FWA, fixed wireless access. And this is really catering to the ultra high data. It leverages the same infrastructure that we have in IoT, eSIMs, profiles, switching them. The big difference, though, is the ARPU is 100 times more than what you get in IoT. Mm-hmm. It leverages the same infrastructure, slightly different set of customers. So something very different. We continue along the IoT game where we are servicing MVNOs primarily in the European market. In the US market, we have both IoT as well as this fixed wireless. And so back to your question in terms of what are telcos doing, we are definitely one of this, which is FWA working with the MNOs. And one idea is just to resell what the MNO has. Mm-hmm. Doesn't go very far from a margin point of view, of course, but you can do certain things with what you have in terms of the FWA service that you get from the MNO, package that a certain way, add to that and sell that to the enterprise, leveraging the same IoT infrastructure. So that's just an example of something that we're doing. And I don't want to hog all your time.
That's quite all right. But you created a really nice segue to talking about partnerships, and how do we put all these things together? And Jimmy, I don't know if you want to add something to how we can leverage IoT and IoT technologies in order to enable new revenue streams, but also let's expand it a little bit further and look at what is the role of partnerships in the overall IoT ecosystem.
I think the role of partnerships is absolutely pivotal. IoT is a different animal to telecoms from what we saw in telecoms before. No company, I don't think, has all the answers to be able to create a whole solution. Even the biggest companies need to be able to partner to be able to create something, because there's just such a diverse set of skill sets. And like Ajay said, there's such a diverse set of use cases, from the really high bandwidth to the tiny bits per month. So that drives us towards an ecosystem. I think we need to start working together, because you need to be able to work with a set of partners with a shared goal, not just interested in their part, but in a shared goal of achieving what the end solution is for the IoT owner. And I think that's really important. We're starting to see it more and more. I mean, obviously, our whole go-to-market is about trying to support the IoT solutions, allow them to innovate a little bit more, allow them to secure a little bit more easily using the telecoms network and all of the functionality that can potentially provide. But we also need to start thinking about mixed estates. We're more and more starting to talk to companies where they have a wired and a Wi-Fi solution, and they'll also have a WAN. Maybe that's where they want to speak to us about cellular, but they could even have a LoRaWAN estate. And all of those access types are genuine and genuinely good ideas, because each one addresses slightly different areas. And I think we need to start working together with them to be able to create a solution that touches each and every area of somebody's overall solution. And we've had quite a lot of conversations with LoRaWAN even lately. And I think that's being able to build those relationships and stop that, okay, that's your bit, this is my bit. I think that's what we need to try and move away from, because otherwise I just don't think that IoT is going to be able to develop, and that's going to hurt us all. Because if it's not a successful solution, if people are not seeing success everywhere around them using IoT, then the interest in IoT will be a little bit less. And I'm not saying it'll go away. It's obviously going to develop over time, but just the speed of take up and the acceleration to market, I think, would be affected if we don't start working together a little bit more.
Well, it is such a vast ecosystem at any rate. So one person very rarely, or by one person, I mean one organization for that matter, can rarely do everything on themselves. They have to rely on various relationships, partnerships to create the ecosystem. Andrew, through the research that you guys have been doing, is there like one use case that has come up on top when it comes to IoT adoption?
No, I mean, there are, as Jimmy and Ajay were saying, there are so many different use cases, and these use cases are either very segment dependent, very vertical dependent. And what I was trying to pull out in the presentation, and Jimmy made that point about achieving this 30 billion connections by 2030, or whatever that figure might be. It's rather academic at this point. We're sort of seeing that the next wave of adoption is far less sophisticated users, and they need a bit of hand-holding, and they need organizations who can bring the IoT value chain together and make it work for them. And we're hearing things like off-the-shelf solutions that are becoming sort of increasingly important. And the sort of research we've been doing recently is into the small and medium-sized business market, where there is an appetite for IoT, but they really don't know how to do it. I mean, you're sort of comparing that segment to, say, BMW or Volkswagen, that has a large in-house development team and can almost take raw IoT and produce the applications and services for themselves. But very different market environment emerging over time. And also, bringing back that point on technology, again, this new wave of customers is far less sophisticated, and they need to be told what the advantages are of this blended technology approach, rather than having a technology thrown at them and saying this will serve all your needs. And then, to bring up a very important point that Ajay made in terms of the types of customers, whether it's somebody sending a little bit of data once a day, compared to those very heavy, low latency, or heavy traffic generating low latency applications that are really generating an awful lot of traffic, particularly when we get into video.
Well, adoption isn't always smooth sailing, for that matter, especially when it comes to connected devices and IoT in general. And I would like to stay a little bit more in that topic, talking about adoption, and I will come to you, Ajay. And if you could shed some light, based on the experience that you guys at iBasis have when it comes to adoption of the services, what are the key challenges? What are the barriers to adopting these solutions? And why do we see so much less, return on investment?
Yeah, so let's start all the way from a customer point of view. So which is the sales cycles are usually long. It's not a service where you just pick something up off the shelf, put it in, and it SIM card or whatever, pick up a device, and it just works. It can happen, but that's usually not the case. So you start moving then into the device. There are different kinds of devices. There's so many of them. There isn't, depending on which region you're in. So if you're in the US region or the US market, you're working with MNOs, you have certain certification needs, okay? And those certification needs are cumbersome, expensive, and that also ties in very well with if you're using a roaming SIM card. Roaming SIM cards have time frames in terms of how much you can use to roam. There are also, if you talk about like the FWA like services I was talking about earlier, you can't do that via roaming. It has to be a local SIM card. And it's not just a local SIM card, it's a particular local SIM card that operates on the operator's specific platform. Okay, it's not. So you need to know where you're buying, what you're buying. If you violate those roaming principles from the operator, for the most part, you get warned. You get warned once, the second time you could be taken out of service. So you have to conform to certain boundaries in terms of how you act. And then all of this needs to work with the device. So you need people who are very IoT device savvy, both internally within your organization as well as with your customers, right? And then ultimately all of this needs to be managed by what we call a connectivity management platform, a CMP. The CMP from a business point of view needs to be at a price point. If you look at LPWA, low power wide area networks, the ARPU that you make on that is usually going to be in the order of $0.50. The cost of operating a CMP from some of the big players is going to be about 17 cents to 20 cents a month. So start asking the question, how much money, and then you have to pay the operator as well. How much money do you make in this, right? So then you have to develop your own CMP, which has its own sets of challenges. Yeah, there are not a lot of players like that. So it's you have to navigate this entire land both from a business point of view as well as from a tech point of view, and the sales cycles are long. Given all of that, it's a growing industry. Okay. So
good.
Yeah.
That's very good, and you highlighted some key challenges there, Ajay, and which brings us to an important aspect of the IoT ecosystem, and that's addressing, and you mentioned it, the standards and security. And Jimmy, could you discuss a little bit the role of interoperability in driving IoT adoption? What is happening around regulations and security?
I think IoT is only going to get where it needs to go if we feel it's secure. It's going to have so much impact in our lives. We're going to be interacting with it. I think the statistic is every 18 seconds by 2025. So we need to feel secure on that. So regulation is really the only way you can go, because unfortunately, it's the only way it's going to happen. I normally compare it to seat belts. So in the UK, it was mandatory to fit seat belts in every car till 1967. I remember going on every holiday I ever went and just bouncing around the back seat in the 1970s and 80s. And it was only when in 1983 they decided they were going to fine you that anybody actually ever bothered wearing their seatbelts. And that was to actually save your life. So if you imagine, if you're going to go to people who, Ajay's already said, are working on small margins and then say, actually, you've got to secure this as well, which is going to add additional cost to your go-to-market, then you're not addressing an audience who's really going to be that receptive. So it's interesting that everybody says when people like Andrew interviews them that security is the most important thing, because I beg to differ when the checks are being signed that's exactly what they do. As with regulation coming on board, obviously the PSTI bill is now in force in the UK. The Cyber Resiliency Act, CRA, we'll just call it CRA from now on, and the extension to the Radio Equipment Directive, they are both being ratified by the EU in the autumn, and they'll be enforced in Q1 2025. So if you want to start to address that huge marketplace of the EU with a qualified device, you're going to need to adhere to them. And that's echoed all around the world. The Cyber Improvement Act in the US, the Code of Practice in Australia, the IoT safety framework in Japan, but there's other elements as well in China, India, South Korea, Saudi, UAE. They've all got them. That's probably mainly consumer, most of those. But then you have the industry specific. So ISO 21434, we hear about that whenever you talk about EV vehicles and advanced metering, actually. But there's a whole raft of them. Medical's got so many that I never even try with that one. But they all really come down to good practices and stuff we'd expect if we bought something we'd expect a device to do. And that, what they've basically done is each of those regulations cherry pick from a single standard. So ETSI 303645, which I've learnt that number, I can say it in my sleep. In fact, it was that standard was updated just last month, I think. And there's some really good organisations you can use. I spoke to the guy at Seatone just recently. They've got some really good resources on, and they've actually reviewed 303645, the new version. I don't know where he gets his time. Proper Horse as well, another organisation that has a really good mapping tool where you can see which elements and provisions of that standard are actually applicable to you within each region. And both of those companies and others, of course, have really good educational services and consultancy. We try and do something similar on a less official basis. We can talk to you, but if you really want to go into depth, they're probably a good place to start. But that sounds quite scary, but when you really start to dig into it, the stuff that's actually there is not that hard. Not putting the same password on everything, and having sensible security, encrypting data, is all stuff that we would expect. And when you come to companies, if you use IoT Safe, or Zariot has a couple of options, IoT Safe and a couple of others, you can use the SIM as a root of trust. So basically, what telecoms should be doing is we should be pushing that, because that and good patching policies and generally being able to support your customers. In fact, something I should mention, the CRA says you have to support your device for 10 years. So you need to make sure that you not only build in security, but you also build in some flexibility, because potentially the absolutely right decision now may be caught by time and be a wrong decision in 5 years' time. So you need to make sure, exactly as Ajay said, you have EU ICC technology, so you've got that flexibility of the over-the-air updates and things like that. So all of that together means that we have to work with the solution owners and with the partners to be able to give best advice and also try and support them in this, what is going to be a really long-term commitment.
I mean, it's not to scare anyone, but securing everything by design and from the beginning and being part of the overall strategy is very important. It goes back to the trust, because if the end user or the customer doesn't understand what they don't understand, and fearing the security element is just lengthens the whole sales cycle that Ajay was talking to begin with, that it's quite long to begin with. So is there a question of how we can put all this together and find a solution that works for everyone? Is there one size fits all or the magic wand solution that will save us all? I will open it to all three of you who wants to get started. I'll
on a security basis,
yeah.
I think if you're looking for a silver bullet,
yeah,
even IoT is so diverse. If you had a silver bullet, not everything would be a werewolf. So you're knackered in every way. So it's really have to look at it in a different way. But it's. I think I liked Andrew's point on education, but I think you can take that a stage further. I think we need to educate ourselves and educate how we talk to customers, because at the moment we talk about technologies, whereas really we should be asking questions. What do you want? If technology was no object, what would you have? What would I do for you? If we start from there is so many things that telco could potentially do, but we don't offer it because we don't talk the same language. When we onboard IP solutions and we start to integrate them into the SIM or to the cellular technology, you can tell that we're talking a slightly different language. So when they say, okay, I want X, Y, and Z, I sit the other side and think, actually, that's ABC in telecoms, and that's easy. We can easily do that. We had something with cryptocurrency. It's so easy to fix once we started talking the same language.
Yeah. And what about you, Ajay? What have you found? Is there a silver bullet, or do we need to adjust the maneuver as we go along?
Well, there is talk of a silver bullet, but I don't believe it is a silver bullet. And from a security point of view, I'm totally with what Jimmy just said. You have to, figure out all the different possible threats. There isn't one possible solution to all of that. To try to get to this point of how do you increase sales cycles, that's kind of what I started with. There is discussion about this new spec SGP32, which is supposed to kind of make the onboarding of profiles faster. I don't personally believe that's going to improve things slightly, but between the MNOs as to what their commercial models are, plus the level of integration that is still needed for each and every MNO, I think it's going to get restricted to a few people in the market that would have to offer this on a wide scale to be really make things run faster. We're not there yet. Maybe that's the direction the market could take, but so this is a play for the people with at least somewhat deep pockets.
I see. And well, we are almost close to the top of our session. We have a few more minutes, and I would like to take those minutes to look at what is coming up in the future. I mean, we will be remiss if we didn't mention AI at least once in the session, right? It owes to be here for some reason beyond being a buzzword. And I'll give you all three 1 minute to tell me your thoughts about IoT and AI, and I'll start with you, Andrew.
IoT and AI. I think we're at the sort of hype cycle stage with AI at the moment. It's AI with everything. We've got sort of AI platforms emerging, and with any of these technologies, so the proof of the pudding is what are those use cases that are coming out that are encompassing AI and IoT. And I think going back to that first slide I put up, we're talking about a generalized IoT market in terms of early adopters moving into the mainstream. Mm-hmm. When you introduce a new technology in there, you go right back to the beginning, and it's those pioneering organizations that need to start working on that. And the success of any sort of market is bringing together real applications or using AI in a way with IoT that delivers real business benefits, and then those start to take off. But at the moment, I see it more of a kind of like academic type argument, and I'm not seeing the reality flooding through in any great number.
Yeah, Jimmy, what are your thoughts around the AI and IoT?
The only way we're ever going to be able to look at the data that we've collected, because we've collected so much data already, but we've never done anything with it because it's impossible. There's just too much to try and get through. I think with AI, that's the only way that we can try and make that data useful for us, because data's normally, when you're collecting something, the more of it you have, the price goes down. So if you've got lots of gold, then the price of gold will go down. Where data is the other way. The more data you have, the more valuable it becomes. So commercially, it makes more sense to give AI that data and allow it to run away and actually start making sensible decisions and maximizing what you can actually get out of the investment you've already made. The problem, I think, if you look at it the other way, is you still need to be able to, at what point do all those little micro elements of data suddenly start to make a picture of a person to the point that you could be susceptible to GDPR or similar. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot there. I think it has to happen, but it's a two-edged sword. We do need to make sure that we look after that, because otherwise we could be in a real problem. As Michael Becker likes, George Orwell could be an optimist if we get that one wrong.
And Ajay, why don't you close us off, sir, with your thoughts around AI and IoT?
Well, thanks. My sense is there's definitely, it's more for verticals. So when you start looking at vertical industries, especially the big generators of data, I think they are sitting on a gold mine. It's a matter of basically tapping into it, coming up with the models, and trying to figure out how does it make their productivity change. Yeah. So you're going to see a lot more of this coming in. I believe it's perhaps less for the horizontal players, because we generate data, but we really don't understand what the data means, because it's very context sensitive. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So yeah. So overall, but I must say, with when we look at what we've spoken about here, there are challenges that we have in the IoT market. I must say this though, it's a market that is growing. When I look at the FWA market in the US, it's already a $8 billion market, growing at 23% year on year. So we're in for some big productivity gains going forward. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, folks, you heard it from the wonderful panel that I have here with me today. IoT is a growing market. Yes, we have challenges. Yes, security needs to be on the forefront of what we do. Innovation never stops. There is no one size fits all, and every use case has to be looked up. And most importantly, awareness, training, understanding what we're dealing with, because there's nothing worse than not knowing what we don't know. And with that, I would like to thank you, Andrew, Jimmy, and Ajay. It's been a fascinating discussion. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks a lot, Nassia.
Bye.